Okay, 15 and 16-year-olds. There are certain values of sine theta which, if you want to smash your exams, and I'm sure you do, you should learn off by heart. So, we're going to fill in this table, you're going to go away and commit them to memory forever. Now you might think, why do I have to bother learning these off by heart? I can just put them in my calculator and it'll tell me. That is the attitude of a half-wit, okay? That's like saying, oh, I don't need to know how to spell because I've got spell checker. Like I said, half-wit. And you're not a half-wit, I hope. So, we're going to fill this in and you're going to learn them. Here we go. Right, to fill in the 30s and 60s, just draw a little triangle if you want to jog your memory. Okay, a right angle triangle where the hypotenuse is 2 and this side is 1. So the hypotenuse is twice the length of that. When that's 2 and that's 1, this angle is exactly 30 degrees. Okay? And this angle is exactly 60 degrees. Right? So now we can work out the sine and cos of 30 and 60. So sine of 30 is, well, sine theta is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So sine of this angle, the opposite is 1. The hypotenuse is 2. So sine of 30 is exactly a half. So let's fill that in. There we go. Right, let's work out the sine of 60. Sine of 60 is, well, now we're looking at this angle, and the opposite of that angle is here. We don't know that yet, but we can easily work it out using Pythag. Okay? So hypotenuse squared is that squared plus that squared. So 2 squared is that squared, 1 squared plus, let's call that x, plus x squared. Okay, so therefore x squared is 2 squared minus 1 squared. So x squared is 3. For x is the square root of 3. Okay, so the length of that side is root 3. So therefore, sine of 60 degrees is the opposite. It's root 3 over the hypotenuse, which is 2. So sine 60 is root 3 on 2. Good. Right, let's look at cos. So, cos of 30. Cos of 30 degrees. Cos theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So for this angle, the adjacent is here. So that's root 3. And the hypotenuse, of course, is still 2. So cos 30 is root 3 on 2. Same as sine 60. And I'm sure you can guess that the cos of 60 is going to be a half. But let's prove it. Cos of 60 is adjacent over hypotenuse. So for this angle, the adjacent is there, which is 1. Hypotenuse 2. Yes, cos of 60 is indeed a half. Okay, so if you can just remember that a 2 to 1 triangle like this has angles of 30 and 60, you can fill in these columns here. Right, what about this one? So 45 degrees. Let's draw another triangle. A right angle triangle where that's 45. And because angles in triangle add up to 45, that must also be 45. So let's say that that has length 1 and that has length 1. They must be the same length because this is symmetrical down that line of symmetry there. So we can work out the hypotenuse. So that's squared. Let's call it x again. So x squared is that squared. 1 squared plus that squared. 1 squared. So x squared is 2. So x is the square root of 2. Okay? So that's root 2. So for a 45-45 triangle, when these sides are 1, the hypotenuse is root 2. So we can now work out the sine of 45. Sine of 45 is, it doesn't matter which one we take, because it's symmetrical. Let's pick this one. Opposite is 1, hypotenuse is root 2. So sine 45 is 1 and root 2. And again, I'm sure you're ahead of me. The cos of 45 is also 1 on root 2. Because cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent is 1, the hypotenuse is root 2. So they're the same because the opposite and the adjacent just happen to be the same for a 45-degree triangle like this. Okay. Right, what about when theta is 0? Okay. Yeah, I'll draw another triangle for this. So let's just take any right angle triangle, okay? Theta there. So we've got the hypotenuse, the adjacent, and the opposite. Okay, so we don't know what theta is in this case. Let's think about what, for sine, what the opposite divided by the hypotenuse will be when theta is 0. So that angle there, theta, the sine of theta is that divided by that. As that angle gets smaller and smaller and smaller, can you see that the opposite gets smaller and smaller and smaller? Okay? So when that angle finally, when theta hits 0, the opposite is also 0. Okay? So therefore, opposite divided by hypotenuse is still that. So it's 0 divided by some value, which is 0. Okay? So therefore the sine of 0 is 0. Right, what about the sine of 90? So that means that this angle here, theta, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it's going to hit 90. The hypotenuse is still that distance, whatever it is, okay? But the opposite there, as theta hits 90, can you see that the opposite also becomes the same length as the hypotenuse as soon as it hits 90? So, I don't know if I explained that very well. I shall do it again with another triangle. So, when theta is big, okay, there, theta's maybe 80 degrees there, can you see that the opposite has got bigger and bigger, and it's almost the same length as the hypotenuse now? The adjacent's getting smaller and smaller, and as soon as that angle actually hits 90, the opposite is the same length as the hypotenuse. So therefore, the opposite divided by hypotenuse, the same length, is 1. So the sine of 90 is 1. Right. And for these values, it's exactly the same argument. The cos of 0, right, when this value here, when theta gets smaller and smaller and smaller, when it hits 0, the adjacent, because cos is adjacent over hypotenuse, it's that divided by that. As theta gets smaller and smaller and smaller, the adjacent gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it eventually, as it hits 0, the adjacent becomes the same length as the hypotenuse. So adjacent over hypotenuse is 1 when theta is 0. And again here, when theta is 90, that's going to be 0. The adjacent over the hypotenuse, okay, that divided by that, as theta's getting bigger and bigger and bigger here, the adjacent's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And when theta hits 90, there, the adjacent has disappeared, the adjacent is 0. So 0 divided by hypotenuse is 0. Okay, there you go. So 15 and 16-year-olds, learn that table off by heart and you will crush it.